They say that America is a racist country, and they're right. We are an incredibly racist country. We're in a country that has reintroduced segregation, that teaches in schools that certain races are better than others and certain races are worse than others. Our culture is suffused with racism. In our streets, we had race riots that specifically targeted people based on their race with the approval of the government, with the funding of corporate America, and the backing of our culture. When the left says that we are an incredibly racist country, they're right. And they made it that way. And they made it that way because we let them do it. We allow the left to claim that their new exciting new racism is actually anti-racism, that their exciting new segregation is really desegregation, that their inversion of racism is somehow new and better. Reacting to racism, the left decided to create its own racism. The trouble is that systemic racism in America went the way of the dodo with the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement splintered. It splintered between the integrationists and the black nationalists. The integrationists, the folks like Martin Luther King, had one vision for America in the future. The vision is embodied by rather famous Martin Luther King quote that we should be judged by the content of our character. That quote has been virtually eliminated from public life because anti-racism, which is not in any way opposed to racism, insists that racialism is the only content of our character that matters, that colorblindness is itself a form of racism, and thus they insist in every setting that everybody identify their race, their sexuality, every collectivist detail about them, and to be judged by that identification. Is that healthy? No. It is, of course, incredibly tribal and racist, which is exactly what anti-racism sets out to do. Anti-racism says that there is no possible way not to be a racist except by being the right kind of racist. And that is really what the left's anti-racism critical race theory offers. It offers the right kind of racism, or what they call reverse racism. Racism, they insist, is not bad because it hates people. Hate isn't actually bad. What's bad is hating the wrong sorts of people. We know the left did this with class warfare, where the left declared that oppression isn't bad, tyranny isn't bad, dictatorship isn't bad. We need a dictatorship of the proletariat. We need the right sort of dictatorship and the right sort of tyranny, a tyranny of the working class. And this is where they split from the liberals. The liberals, many of America's founding fathers, believed that we needed to get rid of tyranny. We needed to have a free society, one that would actually enable people to do whatever it is that they want within certain boundaries, in which the government would not be a massive, powerful, oppressive force. The leftists, however, they were the ones who, in the French Revolution, spilled oceans of blood in order to force people to behave exactly the way that they should. And this was the fundamental difference between the liberals and the left when it comes to the state and when it comes to so much else. The racism that we're suffering from in America now, and it is systemic racism because it is embedded in the government, the various equity plans of the Biden administration. Look at what happened in East Palestine, where Buttigieg spent his time as Secretary of Transportation focusing entirely on race, on systemic racism, getting rid of all the racist highways. Well, the asteroid like this just cropped up on him, and he was not interested in them because it was happening to the wrong race of people. This is what racism does. This is what systemic racism does. And systemic racism in America keeps getting worse and worse with every equity policy, with every diversity program, because it's premised on the idea that we need the right sort of racism, we need the right sort of oppression, we need the right sort of tyranny, and then we will get to where we want to get to. The media throws around the term authoritarian a whole lot these days. You know what authoritarian really means? It means exactly what they do. Is there speech on the internet that they don't like? Let's censor it. Are there people who have views that they don't like? Let's do something about them. Are there words in books from 50, 70, 100 years ago that bother us? We should rewrite those books. This is what authoritarianism means. When Biden talks about centralizing elections, adding 2 Democrat states, Hacking the Supreme Court, this is authoritarianism in a nutshell. We will take total power and then we will make the right kind of society, the society that we believe should exist. This is the tyranny that's become omnipresent, and of course it leads to racism. It's very helpful to have racism in order to bolster an authoritarian system because you want people who are going to be on your side, who are going to be isolated, who are going to support anything and everything you might do. Some people are radicalized and politicized, but when you create entire groups, artificial in many cases, you can then create your own base, which is what the left is doing, as they're doing the transgender movement that they've done before. And thus we have an incredibly racist society. They have made America a racist country. We've made America a racist country because we believe, or we were allowed to talk ourselves into believing that the best way to fight racism was with more racism or anti-racism. That the best way to eliminate systemic racism is with systemic racism. Much the left listens that the best way to fight oppression is with more oppression. This is how we got to where we are. And it also tells us how we go away from where we are. The end result is very, very clear. The more we embrace tribalism, racism, hate, the more we end up right back where the left wants us. The left wants a divided society. It wants a society that is at war with itself, a society where there's no common ground, no middle ground, no room for people to say, wait a minute, this isn't how we want to live. Racism in its various forms is a very convenient means of shifting debate. The left pretty much does everything it wants under the guise of fighting racism. Nationalize elections, sure, we're trying to fight racism. Mandate 20 different types of things, sure, in the name of fighting racism. Socialized medicine, fighting racism. Of course, none of this has anything to do with fighting racism. One of the best embodiments of that was Biden showing up in Selma to commemorate the march in which civil rights protesters were physically, violently assaulted by Democrats under a Democrat governor, a guy by the name of George Wallace, who tried to run for the Democratic nomination for president. And of course, he says the Republicans are trying to cover up the real history. Meanwhile, he shows absolutely no interest in what is going on in Selma, where people are living in misery and poverty and have been for quite a while with no government action whatsoever. When your only solution is racism, well, you need to create more racism, and you create more racism by eliminating people's freedom, by eliminating people's happiness, by eliminating people's sense of safety and security. This is a tried and tested model. And racial warfare and class warfare and all the other warfares that the left unleashes. The left has built America into a racist country. But we don't have to accept that racism, and we don't have to accept the lies. We can fight back, and we can make America a nation of its people rather than a nation of its races. Thank you for listening.